This was unlike him, and the soldier was stunned by what had come over him. The wetness from his eyes began pouring over his cheeks, and it seemed there was nothing he could do to stop it. However, it seemed to worsen when they stopped him at the gates. That's when he heard something that made his blood run cold. "Stop! Don't let him onto that plane," the voice shouted. He felt the warm bodies of waiting passengers and crew around him, overwhelming his senses. He felt he was already pulled thin, and the loud chattering around him didn't help his already frazzled emotions. Haley was the most beautiful thing Brooks had ever seen, and as soon as they locked eyes, they knew they had something special. They spent every moment they could together, but there was one issue. Brooks had always wanted to become U.S. military combat soldier. The young couple decided nothing could get in the way of their love, and Brooks enlisted in the military. He admired Haley's support, and 2 years later, he proposed to her. However, they didn't suspect what was waiting for them around the corner. Everyone who knew Brooks Lindsay from Jackson, Mississippi, was happy for him and Haley. They thought they were the type of couple any couple would dream of being. Shortly after their marriage, the pair shared the exciting news with everyone. They were expecting a baby, but Brooks had something weighing on his mind. He had been enlisted as a soldier and was excelling in his career, which meant it would impact his future. It was a sacrifice he was willing to make, but he had no idea how much he would regret the decision later. The couple had just found out that Haley was pregnant, but just over a week later, Brooks was notified about a deployment to Kuwait. The papers stated that he would be gone for 9 months. The couple rushed and calculated the timing they had been given and realized that his deployment meant he chanced missing the birth of their child. 7 months later, Haley's belly had grown. The couple was happy, but that was before they got disappointing news. The soldiers were required to do special training before they were shipped out to Kuwait, which meant that Brooks had to fly out to Texas. But the timing was the most unfortunate. The time that Brooks was supposed to be in Texas was the time the baby was supposed to be due. Couple tried not to panic and began thinking of ways he could still be there for the birth of their first child. They spent a couple of hours looking into different options, and that's when Brooks realized that the Red Cross could assist them. They had a program that offered special leave for soldiers, expecting a child so they could be there for the birth. Brooks and decided to investigate further. Their hopes came crashing down again when they saw the requirements this special leave would take. They were struck with the reality that Brooks might miss their baby's birth. They learned that the process offered by the Red Cross only granted leave if the mother, baby, or both were in distress. It would also have to be confirmed by a medical professional. Brooks' stomach dropped at what they had discovered. He had been so excited to become a father, and he felt heartbroken that he wouldn't be there to witness such an important moment in their lives. Soldiers worldwide have made and continue to make sacrifices and often have to leave their families behind to protect their country. It was not easy for Brooks to say goodbye to his wife when the time for his deployment came. It broke his heart to leave her behind. They had recently discovered their baby would be a girl, and the pair were over the moon about having a daughter. They spent many evenings debating about names and eventually settled on Millie. However, things weren't going to go as smoothly as they had hoped. Brooks was all set to leave for his training, but the couple was in tears as they said their goodbyes. Leaving his 7-month pregnant wife and his baby girl, who was soon to be born, was the most challenging thing he had ever had to do. Brooks's training was tough, but he tried his best to keep in contact with Haley. They FaceTimed each other every chance they got so that she could keep him up to date with the pregnancy and any news that would affect the big day. Haley went to every one of her checkups to make sure everything was going well, and it was. But the status changed when she went to her last checkup. The doctors informed her that they had identified some complications. They told Haley that her delivery date would have to be moved forward, and she made sure to contact Brooks. But things got worse as time progressed. When Brooks checked in with the doctor on the day, he was informed that there were further complications and they would need to rush Haley in as the baby was in distress. Although deeply worried about his wife and daughter, Brooks also realized that this twist of fate meant he could now try to apply for special leave to be there with them. There were so many hoops to jump through to try to get Brooks cleared to come home for the birth. The rules were firmly set in place, and facts were simply that men often did not get approval to leave their post to join the birth experience back home. The Red Cross only approves this in particular situations when the pregnant woman is in distress. They didn't fall into that category, so they had to come up with a plan. The only good thing about missing such a life-altering event is that everything is well and good, and there is no need to worry. Since soldiers can't come home unless the woman is in distress, it's meant to seem like a blessing that everyone is well. Sure, they would love to be there with the mother of their child, but they should also feel blessed that nothing is wrong with the pregnancy. Since Haley only had mildly high blood pressure, it didn't look like Brooke would be able to come home at all. But when Haley showed up for what appeared to be a routine checkup, everything changed in a moment. Haley's blood pressure was alarmingly high at her next doctor's appointment. He was concerned that there could be a complication with baby Millie. Haley was instructed to go home and rest while the doctor ran a full battery of tests. What would the results show? Haley suddenly realized she could use her Brooks support. Concerns over the baby left her feeling helpless, and perhaps now they would approve his return. And then she got a terrifying phone call. When her phone began to ring, Haley was almost too scared to answer, but concern for Millie made her click the answer button. It wasn't good news. The doctor told her everything she'd been worrying about. Her high blood pressure was affecting her internal organs. But even more importantly, the situation could also affect the health of the baby. The doctor made the decision. The health risks for both mother and child were too great. They were forced to take action immediately. When Brooks checked in with the doctor on the day, he was informed that there were further complications and that they would need to rush Haley in as the baby was in distress. Although deeply worried about his wife and daughter, Brooks also realized that this twist of fate meant he could now try to apply for special leave to be there with them. Haley was rushed to the hospital within the hour for round-the-clock observation. The doctor decided that they couldn't take any chances and that they had to induce labor. It was such a turnaround that the change in plan left Haley reeling. Thank goodness she had the presence of mind to let Brooks know the situation before she left. Optimistically, Brooks was excited. It was his chance to be there with her for the birth of their firstborn child. Now there were more hoops to jump through. Among the crush of emotions, there was a lot to do. Haley had to inform the Red Cross about her change in condition in order to get Brooks' leave approved. She had to provide confirmation from her doctor, which she did as soon as she arrived at the hospital. Now that he was permitted to join his family, Brooks had to deal with the uncertainty of his wife and child's health. He didn't know what to expect from the coming days. The Red Cross process had been agonizing and had required a written confirmation from the doctor first. Once confirmed, Brooks rushed to the DFW airport and finally got a connecting flight by way of El Paso. Luckily, Brooks hadn't yet left for Kuwait and was relatively close. All he needed was the first flight out of there. But there was trouble at the connecting flight that no one could have predicted. When he arrived at the airport in El Paso, he found out that he would need to have a layover in Dallas. All the flights were full. And stranded, but all he could do was sit it out and hope that Haley could wait for him. However, fate cruelly intervened once again. The flight was delayed, and there was now no way that Brooks would make it on time. The crestfallen soldier drew many stares from other passengers. When he explained his situation, the people around him were very sympathetic. Back at the hospital, Brooks' mother took his place in the delivery room. Also heartbroken that her son was missing the birth of Millie, she decided to do something about it. Despite protests from the doctor, who eventually allowed it, she took her phone in and FaceTimed Brooks. To Brooks' delight, he could now also witness the birth. As if on cue, Haley's water broke and the labor began progressing, but Brooks was still stuck in El Paso. He struggled not to run through security and right up to his boarding gate. After boarding, he finally felt like he was on his way to his wife, but he was still a long way from home. The feeling of helplessness only grew as he sat still in the tiny airplane seat, not knowing what was happening down below. Finally, he made it to Dallas, and he all but sprinted to his connecting flight back home. But there was bad news waiting for him when he got there. His flight was delayed by 2 hours. Getting to Haley while still in labor was quickly slipping away from him. The doctor told Haley that birth was happening right now. Holding the small screen in both hands, Brooks spoke reassuring words to Haley over long distance. He cheered her on as she progressed through the labor, continually telling her how great she was doing. The flight called to start boarding, but Brooks was glued to his phone screen. All of a sudden, it was all too much to keep inside. Still in his fatigues, the soldier sat against a wall near the terminal, staring at his phone screen and crying uncontrollably. Unfortunately, the flight was now boarding. Brooks would have to soon switch his phone off, and Millie still wasn't born. Pitying him, the other passengers tried their best to delay boarding, but eventually they were all out of time. The flight crew instructed Brooks to switch off his phone. With a broken heart, he was just about to when he heard the doctor suddenly shout, "Stop! Don't let him board that plane. She's here. She's here." Brooks' face lit up with excitement when he heard this. Other passengers were enthralled by his situation, and cheers rang out for him. Some of them explained what was happening to the flight crew, and Brooks was graciously allowed a few moments to witness the big moment. After the emotional roller coaster of a day, Brooks finally got to experience what he had been dreaming of for so long. Finally, his little girl was born, and he was able to see it all. Baby Millie finally made it out to the world, and there was a whole crowd ready to welcome her. Everyone celebrated in that beautiful moment when they heard her cry for the first time. It was an incredibly special moment to see all these strangers so happy for Brooks. What had initially seemed like an obstacle resulted in him being able to witness the birth of his baby girl. Like any other birth, the most important thing is the health of the baby and the mother. Both Haley and baby Millie were feeling great, as Haley's blood pressure quickly began to stabilize following the birth. At birth, Millie weighed a healthy 7 pounds and 6 ounces. And knowing that Brooks was on his way made everything that much better. The way this story unfolded is just more proof that everything happens for a reason. Despite the complications and distress Millie faced, the doctor's quick action resulted in a smooth birth, and baby Millie was born in perfect health. Being able to witness her coming into the world filled Brooks' heart with joy, and he wore a smile on his face for the rest of the day. Now, there was just one thing left to do. Finally, the twice-delayed flight boarded, and the flight turned out to be a pleasant one for all on board. So many other passengers had shared in Brooks' tension that day that his personal joy was shared by them all. With positive vibes all around, everyone relaxed and enjoyed the flight. Brooks settled in and awaited his next big moment, knowing that soon he would be able to finally meet his daughter in person too. In order to protect the privacy of those depicted, some names, locations, and identifying characteristics have been changed and are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblances to actual events or places or persons, living or dead, are entirely coincidental.